A lot of people start learning Vietnamese feeling very excited, but after a few months, many of them still struggle to understand native speakers or pronounce tones correctly.
And honestly, I don't think it's because Vietnamese is impossible.
I think many learners simply start with the wrong thing first. So in this video, I want to share the learning roadmap I usually recommend to my students, especially complete beginners.
Hi everyone, xin chào các bạn. Welcome back to Vietvuive channel. I'm a Vietnamese teacher, and over the years, I work with learners from different countries and language backgrounds. I have also created several Vietnamese learning books, including a Vietnamese pronunciation book, a A1 beginner book, and a Vietnamese travel book. Currently, these books are available in both English and Japanese versions. And through teaching students and creating this material, I noticed that many learners often feel so overwhelmed at the beginning. So today, I want to make the learning process feel simpler and clearer.
Why Vietnamese feels so difficult?
I think Vietnamese feels difficult mainly because it's very pronunciation based. In some languages, even your pronunciation is not perfect. People can understand you quite easily. But in Vietnamese, small sound differences can completely change the meaning. For example,
Ba. Ba means tree. Ba means grandmother. Ca means mug. Cá means fish.
For beginners, these tones can sound almost identical at first. Besides tones, Vietnamese also have many sounds that may not exist in your native language. And that's why I personally believe pronunciation should come before heavy grammar study. So, first step I recommend is focusing on Vietnamese sound. Not memorizing hundreds of vocabulary words, not complicated grammar, just learning how Vietnamese sounds work. At this stage, I usually recommend practicing vowel, tones, final consonants, and listening discrimination. For example, many learners struggle to hear the difference between an and and that's completely normal. Your ears need time to adjust to a new sound system. This is also one of the reasons why I created my Vietnamese pronunciation book.
I wanted to give beginners more structured pronunciation practice step by step. And of course, you're not learning alone. A key leader friends called by me will accompany you throughout the book, making pronunciation practice more enjoyable and less intimidating. With colorful illustration, practical exercises, listening practice, and quick self-check after each lesson, you will always know how much progress you are making. So the book focuses on tones, pronunciation drill, listening exercises, and common Vietnamese sounds that learners often struggle with. Because from my experience, learners who build a strong pronunciation foundation usually improve much faster later.
After learning the basic sounds of Vietnamese, I think many learners should focus on what I call survivor Vietnamese. At this stage, the goal is simple: to communicate everyday situations. You don't need perfect grammar yet, you just need useful Vietnamese that you can actually use immediately. For example, greeting people, ordering food, asking for prices, using transportation, shopping, or introducing yourself. And honestly, this stage is especially useful for people who are traveling in Vietnam, living in Vietnam for short term, or simply want to start speaking quickly. And that's also why I created my book Instant Vietnamese. I designed it for learners who want practical Vietnamese they can use right away in real life situations. But I also wanted the learning experience to feel more fun and connected to Vietnamese cultures. So besides the useful phrases and conversations, the book also includes
Cultural tips, interesting local insights, and small challenges that encourage learners to use Vietnamese in real situations.
Because personally, I think language learning becomes much more memorable when learners interact with the culture instead of only memorizing vocabulary. And I think one of the best feelings as a beginner is realizing, oh, I can actually use Vietnamese in real life. After learners become more comfortable with basic communication, I usually recommend building a strong long-term foundation. And this stage is especially important for people who are planning to live in Vietnam long-term, work in Vietnam, have Vietnamese family members, or simply want to understand the language more deeply. At this point, learners usually need more than survival phrases. They want to start building their own sentences naturally, understanding grammar more clearly, improving listening skills, and becoming more independent when using Vietnamese. And this is also the stage where my A1 Vietnamese book is designed to help. I created it for learners who want a more structured learning experience from the beginner.
So, this book focuses on essential grammar, sentence patterns, vocabulary buildings, listening practice, reading exercises, and daily conversation topics. Instead of only memorizing expressions, learners gradually learn how Vietnamese sentences actually work. For example, how to ask questions, how to describe daily activities, how to talk about past, present, and future actions, or how to express opinions naturally. I think this is the stage where learners begin to see how far they have come. They're no longer just repeating phrases they haven't memorized, they are starting to build their own sentences and express their own ideas in Vietnamese. And little by little, they begin to think in Vietnamese rather than translating everything from their native language.
And even though grammar can sometimes feel intimidating, I believe learning it step by step makes the process much more manageable and enjoyable. One thing I strongly recommend throughout the entire learning process is listening practice. Actually, I think Vietnamese is a language that should be learned through the ears first. Many learners try to memorize grammar rules or vocabulary very quickly. but they don't spend enough time getting familiar with the natural sounds of Vietnamese. One method I really like is shadowing. Shadowing means listening to a short audio clip and repeating it immediately after the speaker. Not only repeating the words, but also trying to copy the rhythm, the tones, the speed, and the natural intonation of native speakers. I think it's very helpful to listen while following the script or subtitles.
Even short conversations or short videos can be very helpful if you listen to them multiple times. At first, you may not notice much progress, but after a few months, you will probably be surprised by how much more Vietnamese you can understand.
And I think this is also one of the best ways to make Vietnamese feel less too fast for beginners. After building a stronger foundation, learners can slowly morph into more natural and real Vietnamese. At this stage, Vietnamese starts becoming less like a school subject and more like a part of your daily life. For example, you can start learning through YouTube videos like this, podcasts, interviews, vlogs, movies, music, or casual conversations. I think this is one of the most enjoyable stages of learning a language because little by little you begin understand things naturally without translating everything in your head. Sometimes language learning happens in very small moments, like reading a cafe menu, seeing a street sign while walking outside, or recognizing a word you learned before when you go to supermarket. Even if you don't understand everything yet, these small moments of exposure are still very valuable because your brain slowly becomes more familiar with Vietnamese over time. I know Vietnamese can feel difficult sometimes, but I truly believe that with the right learning orders, the process becomes much more enjoyable. You don't need to become perfect immediately. You just need to improve step by step. And whether your goal is pronunciation, daily conversation, or traveling in Vietnam, I hope my books and videos can help make your Vietnamese learning journey feel a little easier and more enjoyable.
Right now, I'm also continuing to develop more Vietnamese learning materials for higher levels such as A2, P1, and P2.
So in the future, I hope this channel and this book can continue supporting learners throughout different stages of their Vietnamese learning journey. Thank you so much for watching and see you in the next video. Hẹn gặp lại!